A Central Texas landmark turns 100. KCEN HD presents ALICO's 100th anniversary special, A Century of Stories.
Welcome to the 100th birthday celebration of the ALICO building here on KCEN HD. I'm Chris Radcliffe.
And I'm Myra Arthur. Today we're celebrating the anniversary of a Waco landmark. For a century now, the ALICO building has been standing tall here in downtown Waco, and there's plenty of history within these walls that's helped shape this Central Texas city.
The ALICO building is a symbol of pride and stability to some who remember the early years. For others, it's just an office building, but we're about to show you it is so much more.
We're starting out here in the basement of the building. 100 years ago this month, ALICO was open and ready for business. Many spent their non-air conditioned days that summer watching the structure start slowly, but then becoming the tallest building west of the Mississippi.
Yes, Myra, and many consider this building indestructible before it was even constructed. In fact, the 1953 F5 tornado didn't even do hardly any damage to the 22-story structure. Let's take a look at the ins and outs of the ALICO building. The ALICO building, still serving the Amicable Life Insurance Company. Here in the year 2010, it still has the look of a throwback, more regal time. Original insignias above the door handles, marble floors brought in from Italy just after the turn of the 20th century, and the pride of being the biggest on the block. Built for $750,000, but the ALICO constructed was built out of necessity and still meets that need today.
It was a life insurance company, and it's interesting that a lot of people don't know that this is a life insurance company here. They know the ALICO building, but they have no idea what's in it. And we've been here for 100 years. When
President and Actuary Artemis R. Roberts commissioned the project, the first thing that workers did was dig down 40 feet to establish a foundation that would stand the test of time.
They wanted to have a really secure foundation, and they got down to bedrock, which is what they were trying to get to, for a really secure foundation on the building.
Well, every major construction project has a few surprises that come its way. When they dug 40 feet down for the base of the ALICO building, they found that they were constantly fighting water. It had to be pumped out. The solution? This artesian well. They dug it 1,800 feet below ground, and it led to a very pure, very safe water source, which they used for the bathrooms, as well as a drinking fountain on every floor.
We're going to be going down to the lower level that not a whole lot of people have ever seen. You're going to see some real old equipment in here,
including an old coal chute which used to power the boilers, tools from the early 1900s, and those monstrous heaters. Good for the winter, but remember, for years, no air conditioning. As we move up the floors, you can't help but sneak a peek at the view. 733 windows, which now don't open, but years ago, before air conditioning, as you might imagine, paperweights were needed all over the place. Next up, the top floor and some original offices. And finally, the coup de grace, the roof.
This is a good place to see the size of the ALICO letters. And there's been stories written on these letters because they're neon. Okay. And that neon goes out, and those guys have to go out over the side and repair the neon.
Mike and I, on our photographer Rocky, bravely made our way all the way to the top, where looky-loos gladly handed over a quarter 80 to 100 years ago to climb this stairwell and get the best view possible in Waco.
Chris, I have never been up here before.
You made it.
Because I was a coward, but I came up here today with you, and the view is outstanding. Now, this is neat. Somebody would pay to come up here and look around and see everything.
If you notice, in the building, all electrical has been added post-construction during renovations, but one thing isn't original. Elevators were installed in 1910. The technology of the day was just 4 years old. Just one cable could support each cab, but there are plenty just in case. Of course, now it's all automated. And how important was the building when the 1953 tornado hit? It proved how indestructible it really was.
And it really came into play during the tornado when everything was torn down around here. We still had electricity. We had the water in the building, wasn't much damage, so it became the control center for that tornado. And you've probably seen pictures of everything torn down around the building, and the building's just standing there.
With 100 years comes just as many memories. The American-Amicable Life Insurance Company still employs some of the same people here that it did over a half a century ago. And inside this building, people are more than just co-workers. They become like family. And just like yours, they've been through so much together. Stories still circulate through these walls of everything from the 1953 tornado to the first computer the building ever saw. As you'll see, the ALICO building isn't just an office. To some, it's a second home.
It's June 1st, 1960. Eugenia Cooley found herself 2 days out of high school and on day one of her first ever job in the ALICO building.
All I know is I was scared to death.
Her story is like so many who 50 years later still work here. Eugenia wanted off the family farm in Abbott, so she chose ALICO. Back in those days, anyone who came to work here, no matter their rank, started out as a company messenger, trekking up and down 22 stories.
I was really almost afraid to look at anybody because you had to put the carrier on the right side of the desk for every individual, and it was hard.
Eugenia's now a senior accountant. Lanny Peavy got his start vacuuming out elevator shafts. Today, he's president and CEO.
That's been a great ride. It really has.
The Texas A&M graduate began his career working in Dallas with another insurance company, which eventually merged with ALICO. Now, 45 years later, he has the corner office with a view. And just outside that office, you'll find his right-hand woman, Jeanette Stone. Their relationship is one well known throughout this building. For more than 30 years, she's been reading Lanny's mind.
I know what he's going to do before he does it.
My wife says it's like a brother-sister.
Like all dynamic duos, there have been a few growing pains.
I don't know, I was having a bad day or something one day.
He had been picking at me all day.
It was quitting time, and she walks out the door and slams the door.
And I thought he was going to fire me, and he thought I was going to quit.
I jump up and come busting through the door, and she's out there just dying laughing. And as soon as I saw her, I started laughing too.
That's kind of the way it's been.
She's probably going to kill me for telling it.
Whether it's here in the polished offices on the 18th floor or down in the print shop on ground level, you'll find the stories here, just like the gears on these machines, have been circulating for years. Perhaps the most talked about, the 1953 tornado. Bill Aldridge, manager of general services here in the print shop, has worked here 50 years. He remembers a co-worker's tale of what she saw in the tornado's aftermath.
Rain, streets were filled with water, and all she saw was arms and legs and heads and body parts floating. And it horrified her until she figured out it was mannequins that had blown out of the storefronts.
The building withstood that terrible twister, and since then, it's remained a symbol of stability.
Some things never change, and the ALICO building is one of those things.
There's been some talk of retirement for these employees who've worked here 30, 40, 50 years, but not just yet. When the time does come, on that last day when the desks are finally cleared, with a bit of a tear in his eye, Lanny Peavy says it's hard to tell what he'll be thinking.
Hard to say.
You think that'll be an emotional day?
That will be an extremely emotional day. Yes, it will.
Still to come, we're going to take a look at what this building has meant to the consumer side of things.
You're watching the 100th anniversary special of the ALICO building, A Century of Stories, here on KCEN HD.
This is ALICO's 100th anniversary special, A Century of Stories. Stay tuned. There's more to come right here.